and graduate level of UNM between '83 and 2000, and developed and taught a course on sacred site and environmental protection on Native American lands in the Native American Studies program at UNM. Paul's peer-reviewed professional papers are included in publication of the British Columbia Chamber of Mines, New Mexico Bureau of Mining and Mineral Resources, Colorado School of Mines, Freiburg Technical Institute, Germany, and European Union Science and Technology Directorate. He has served as a technical expert in regulatory proceedings periodically. Sorry, I'm French. Since '79, including proceedings for uranium facilities such as White Mesa Uranium Mill in Utah, Crow Butte, in situ uranium mine in, and he pitched for a project in other states, and the list goes on. So he also came here and was involved in the Elliott Lake mining also, in order to be part of the process and decommissioning in Canada and the adoption of regulation concerning mine operations and mine reclamation. So like you can see, he has lots of knowledge, and I present to you Mr. Paul Robertson.
Thank you very much. I actually saw the presentation we just saw at the BAPE hearing in September here where in response to the Quebec moratorium on uranium mining. And as you saw, that was a presentation of primarily standard practices rather than innovative or best practices. Some of the things I noted, you may have noted as well. The workers were not wearing breathing protection. They talked about breathing protection, but they were in the mine. They should have had it on. They talked about doing environmental baseline data when the mining begins, which is 5 to 10 years after the exploration begins, which is going to make changes in water, soil, plant, cultural setting. So it's too late. Baseline is pre rather than during. And we'll talk about some of the waste management technologies that Mr. Leclerc mentioned too, as we get into my presentation. And let's see, I have this button.
Because it's not the PowerPoint presentation, it's a PDF that I have.
Okay, so I need to go page by page, but I get an arrow.
Or you can tell me and I'll just...
Okay, so just starting, these are a couple of pictures. The lower right is a uranium mine before reclamation. And the top left is a uranium mine after reclamation. There's a little pond in the middle of that picture, which is where groundwater that has flowed into the mine has reached the surface, has daylighted. The cover over the groundwater was not deep enough to keep it underground because they poor measurement of the water level. And this is taken from the home of the sister of the lady on the bottom right, Virginia Purley. And the lower left is a irrigation water supply that is downstream of the mine, but it was outside the permit area, so it wasn't reclaimed. Yeah, so they did still work on the mine. So this is the Jackpot uranium mine at Laguna Pueblo. The community has sought additional cleanup to redo what was done. And so trying to improve reclamation conducted from 1985 to 1996. Get that groundwater back underground, begin to address unreclaimed sites. So what I want to focus on are these 4 points. Best practices in uranium mining is to not do it. We have solar and wind, renewables which are booming. We have nuclear reactor growth and projections of use that have been dropping consistently and persistently. And so the reduced demand for new uranium sites means that best practices are going to need to be applied to the existing sites. There's not going to be very many new ones. So we can't let these sites be grandfathered in and left. They need to be treated as if they were needing work rather than left behind as new regulations are adopted. So the best practices are going to need to apply to the legacy sites, existing mines, zombie mines, what some people in New Mexico call mines that have closed but want to reopen, and the operating mines. There's few, if any, new mines likely to be opened, and they need to have a lot more uranium than Stratico had to even think about opening. Uranium mill tailings, best practice. Dry tailings below grade. Dry tailings is taking the tailings and removing 80 to 90% of the liquid, so that you're not putting a 50% liquid, 50% solid slurry on the ground, on a liner. And you're not putting it behind a dam. You dig a purpose-built pit, and then you cover. And so the tailings are all below the original ground surface. It's only clean material above. And this is the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission recommendation, and this is one of the recommendations of the Mount Poly panel. Mine waste rock, the largest volume of waste associated with uranium ore, even with 20% grades in Saskatchewan. So the International Atomic Energy Agency recommends that waste rock be treated like tailings. Similar. They have the radioactivity, they have the heavy metals. And they're not. They're left on the surface. And then with in situ recovery, there's new proposals to require restoration, not just meeting existing standards, which is typically allowing pollution up to a standard rather than restoration of pre-existing conditions. So we have some pictures to go with. These little charts, this is the classic chart from the Uranium Red Book for those of you who read these things, and I would encourage people to move up, if you don't mind, because I don't always use very large type in my slides. So right here we have 2008 high nuclear power growth, 140,000 tons of uranium per year. 2014, the high is down to 120. That's the maximum. Even the Atomic Energy Establishment is thinking it's dropped 1/7 in the high projection, and the low projection, 110 to 80,000 tons of uranium per year, 30,000 tons not needed. Now these lines here, this is the uranium production, and the darker is existing sites, and the lighter is projected sites. So as you see, in this 2010 to 2015 period, there was more uranium mined than even the high use scenario. So that's oversupply. And the oversupply has gotten worse. There's bigger lines of existing production. So the world is awash in uranium and uranium deposits and uranium mines. And that's what's keeping the price down, and that's what's keeping demand down, and that's why existing sites need to be the focus of best practices, because there's just not going to be many new sites. So again, looking at dry tailings and below grade as a model of best practice. The U.S. Prime option is below grade in mines or specially excavated pits. So there's no retention structure needed, no dam that is an engineered structure with risk of erosion or other kinds of failure. And the Mount Polley recommendations that have come out concluded that best available technology are unsaturated compacted tailings. Unsaturated means dry. They could have used 3 letters, but they chose 10. And reduction of the use in water covers in a closure scenario. So that is a very big difference than the standard practice in this country. And so these are, again, restating the design criteria. So what do these things look like? Here is an example of a dam break. Here is a dam broke, and here's the rest of the dam. Here's the close-up of the dam, close-up of the break. Here's the warning sign for the spill in English, Spanish, and Navajo. These are very well-educated cattle. And these are the cattle who did not read the sign and walked on the sulfuric acid that was left after the spill. So that's what one dam break looks like. And here's the Mount Polley puppy, where this thing broke here. And this stuff came out and went to the lake. And this is another view of that spill and the dam break itself. So dams break, and even though people don't want them to break, if you put the tailings below the original round surface, if you spend the money to excavate a pit and then cover, you don't have a dam that could break. You don't have a dam that can break during the operational period or the post-closure period, which is the rest of eternity. And these are part of what a below-grade process might look like. This is the largest tailings relocation project in the world. This is 14 million tons of uranium mill tailings next to the mighty Colorado River on the floodplain. It's being slowly excavated. And moved to this place. And this is a place where the tailings are loaded, go into a pit that has been dug, clean soil, very fine shale material, which is a good barrier to flow. The material that was excavated is put back on top. So this is an example of below-grade tailings being used at a disposal site. Moab Tailings Relocation Project and the Crescent Junction disposal site. There are 2 uranium mills that have been proposed with these below-grade tailings. This is one proposed in Colorado where there were 10-acre individual below-grade cells. So you only have an excavation for what you're going to be doing in the next couple of years. You don't build a dam preparing for 30 years when the market's not reliable. You build for the first phase sequentially so that you can reclaim the first 5 years completely while still operating. Owned by a Canadian company, Energy Fuels. They don't plan on building the mill because there's no market, and they already have the one operating mill in the country which does not have below-grade tailings. Now this is another design of a below-grade where this is the original ground surface, and everything goes down into this below-grade cell. And they've used the excavation, or plan to use the excavated materials, to build the foundation for their mill. So this company was Roca Honda Resources, 40% funded by Sumitomo, and now bought by Energy Fuels. So they don't plan on building the mill. So good designs, no construction. Thickening the tailings, taking the water out, is very important to preventing groundwater contamination or surface water release. If you don't have the water, it can't move. I come from Baltimore, so we say water. Other people pronounce that differently. And in most places, water is short. There's not much around. And where it's around, it's expensive to prepare. So if you take the liquid out of the tailings, you can reuse it. And that's a very beneficial practice for mine operation and reduces long-term costs. There's a sequence of different degrees of thickening. This is an evolving science, and so thickened tailings, maybe 75% solids. Surface paste up to the 80%, dry stack over 85. And these are existing technologies being applied. And these are some illustrations of some of the different degrees of thickening. Where the filter tailings is what they mean by dry. So it's down to 80% moisture. That's like dry soil, very low. Cost benefit, quite beneficial to recover. Those looking for new words, rheology is the way materials flow based on their structure and moisture content. So these are some of the relationships that are very important in Ontario. The great mining district of the Serpent River, Elliott Lake, it has the largest water-covered tailings piles in the world. 63 million tons over here, 46, and a lot of the material will be useful for those wanting to look at things later. These are what those tailings piles look like from a 2011 image from Google Earth. So upper left, Quirk, 46 million tons. They put the tailings in, and they've got dams at the edge and dams in the middle, built on the tailings themselves, which is not a material that has structural integrity unless it's dry. And the Denison has perimeter dams that have been built. And was at the hearing on these matters back in the mid-90s at Northwatch's invitation, and the decommissioning had been done, and the hearing was held ex post facto. That is the wrong order. And so best practice is to do the evaluation before you do the construction, and politically it was easier to do it this way. So it's, there's no evaluation. As Mr. Leclerc said, the CNSC is doing an evaluation of the tailing sites. They have not produced any material that I've been able to find, and I search for these kind of things. So I don't know what they're going to do with these two tailings piles, but they are water covered, and there is no effort to reduce the water cover, which is the recommendation. So this will be fun to watch for you in the Serpent River. And this is a mine in Spokane, Washington, which has a pit which is full of water. And that water is going to be pumped out, and there's going to be a blanket of fine material put around the side to allow drainage to filter in. And then there'll be pumps at the bottom to pump that stuff out. And this is the exact way, a lot of content here, but we'll skip the phrases. And these various pits, they're at a steep incline. So the water will eventually drain down to this lower pit. So this is the only design I'm aware of that's based on the Saskatchewan pervious surround, where you allow the water to drain in, and as Mr. Leclerc said, water can't flow up out of a pit. Well, actually, what they do is they have a drain in the bottom of that Dealwood pit, and there's a drain proposed in the bottom of this one. And that drain has to stay unclogged, and the pump that operates has to continue to work to get that water out Otherwise, the water stays in the pit and overflows and gets out. So this is water cover with permanent active maintenance. When you clean a site, it should not require active maintenance, pumps, replacement of pumps, cleaning facilities. So water can flow out of pits if you allow them to fill, and that's what's going to happen if you require pumps to operate for the reasonably foreseeable future. And these are some of the Saskatchewan pits that are filled with water naturally. This is the waste rock pile. Is the waste rock pile being managed similarly to tailings? No, not even close. They're waiting. It's getting more expensive. They're on the surface, no liner. So big waste rock piles, they're supposed to have a very high ore grade at these Saskatchewan mines. That means they have a very high cutoff level, and what would be ore in other places is mine rock here in Saskatchewan, mine waste rock. Things at 0.5%, 0.25% uranium, which is 1% of the 20. It's 3 times the concentration in most regions. So rethinking waste rock management needed badly there. Mines dug into lakes and left to be water covered, and waste rock piles left for someone to figure out what to do once the companies left. Waste rock mines, mine waste rock is seldom characterized. It's put on top. What we found at this Navajo site is the uranium waste rock was 0.6% and 0.2%. 2,000 parts per million is 0.2%. And vanadium and aluminum also very elevated. And the water supplies nearby, springs, they exceed drinking water standards for uranium and approach it for arsenic. So characterizing waste rock before you use it as a cover, pretty good idea. This was 25 years old, uncharacterized. So the last thought is about in situ mines. There's a new rule being out there being proposed, and it requires the companies to monitor for 30 years after closure. Current standards are 2. So long-term monitoring, it's a good idea. And the US government is finally agreeing to it, and it's been 20 years since this rule was modified. So monitoring groundwater, identifying the ore zone, the surrounding zone, the adjacent aquifer, so that they can be restored appropriately, rather than restoring the adjacent aquifer as if it were an ore zone, which has very different water quality. You have to characterize the background before the operation begins. If you do it after, you've already had penetrations which allow oxidation, which changes the chemistry. And requirements to reach restoration for 13 constituents, many more constituents than Mr. Leclerc mentioned. However, here's the list. In the US, if you try hard and you demonstrate you've used best technology, you can petition to have alternative concentration limits, which means you can pass with a C rather than an A. And every single in situ mine in the country has alternative concentration limits as its standard of performance. And so this rule could just be another test before the alternative concentration limit is allowed, or could really involve restoration at the levels that occurred in the adjacent aquifer, which was not an ore zone, as well as in the ore zone. So Isabel has given me my time limit as over, so I've got some discussions of solution mines, which don't exist in Canada, but a very interesting process. What this shows, and it's quite important, is that some of the metals associated with the ore, like selenium, sulfides, they sometimes move faster than uranium. So if this is the uranium here, you've got some pollutants out here where there's not uranium, so that would be waste rock. And you've got some that are retarded, that move a little bit slower. Each different ore zone is different. Each one has a mix of other associated heavy metals and radionuclides. And so where the ore is doesn't mean you have identified where all the contaminants are. So the waste rock is particularly important. And as a last thought, just saying the stuff, the groundwater can be restored, doesn't make it possible. When you add extra hydrogen ions, you oxidize the aquifer. Putting clean water back in doesn't reverse the geochemistry. So it's still an oxidized aquifer. There's still more mobile materials. The injection of the lixiviant, the leaching fluid, oxidizes and mobilizes contaminants, changes the reduction oxidation potential, and natural attenuation is unlikely because of the change in the rock particles themselves. So I moved quickly through a lot of things. I'm glad to discuss any comments or questions that you have with the time that Isabel allows me.
Thank you.